So I'm coming to you today from my home, and I made back safely. Happy about that. Kind of tired when I got in last night, but that's to be expected from a trip, across the country. So want to continue with the conversation about the parable of the Good Samaritan. And again, some say a parable, which is an extended story with a meaning, and some say that it's actually something historical that happened. Typically in parables, the characters are not named, they're just described, and that's what you have in this particular story. So I'm comfortable either way someone wants to go. It doesn't really matter that much to me, because the point is the point, not whether it's an actual historical event or a story with a point. In either case, a point is being made by Jesus. So coming back to where we were, you have this lawyer that stands up, asks Jesus a question in a public environment, and we know that he's doing that to, in some way, tempt Jesus. What exactly the writer means by that, it's not spelled out for us. But typically when Jesus' interlocutors ask him questions that are trying to set him up, it's not something with a good intent. In some way, there's an attempt to trap Jesus and give ammunition whereby he can be accused. So in this particular case, if that is what's going on, the lawyer would want to be demonstrating that Jesus doesn't follow the law, and that's something that is really defended. Jesus' adherence to the law in the Gospel of Matthew. In the Gospel of Luke, it is there as well, but not in the same way as it is in the Gospel of Matthew. So that's what happens. He tries to justify himself when Jesus applauds his answer, that is the lawyer's answer, and the text tells us in chapter 10, verse 29, he's trying to justify himself because now, in answering the way Jesus has, in some way this has put the lawyer on the spot. And so the second question that the lawyer asks is, who is my neighbor? And Jesus answers that question by telling this story of the Good Samaritan. Now, the story of the Good Samaritan, anytime we have a story, we have to know who the players are. And you know how it is sometimes when you have a movie or a TV show or a book you're reading, and you get too many characters in at one time. At least I'm this way. I get too many characters in at one time, and I lose track of who's who and who has allegiance to whom, and who the good guy is and who the bad guy is, especially if you have some kind of compromised characters, as you do sometimes in even in the Bible. And we can talk about one of those. A guy I like to talk about it quite a lot, King Saul, Israel's first king, but that's not for today. So if you want to know, give me a ring sometime. We'll talk about Saul. So who are the characters? Well, you have this traveler. It just says he's going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. We have robbers. All we know about them is that they're robbers, and they fall on this guy and beat him, and of course steal from him. And you have a priest, you have a Levite, and you have a Samaritan. Then you also have an innkeeper. These are our players. And as with any story, you have the interweaving of antagonist and protagonist. And so what Jesus is doing by telling this story is he's setting this up for an unexpected kind of conclusion. So let's talk about geography for a moment. You may have heard or read about Galilee. Pardon me. Galilee is in the north of what we know of today as the Holy Land. It's up by the Sea of Galilee, which is actually a lake. It's small kind of lake. The Jordan River runs down south, from Galilee to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is in the far south, and that is where Jerusalem is, where the land of Judea is. So Galilee in the north, Jerusalem in the south, and stuck right there in the middle is Samaria. Samaria is a nation kind of, that's populated by people that the Jews do not get along with. They are people that are of mixed ancestry, and that's a problem for the Jews, both in Galilee in the north and Judea in the south, because these folks in Galilee and Judea, these Jewish folks, have maintained their ancestral purity. Now, we can talk about that with respect to some of the conversations that are happening today in our land, having to do with immigration. There probably are some points of connection, but that's not exactly where I'm trying to go today. Although the Schwab article does help you go in that direction. I want to go in a different direction in these talks. So Jericho is a little bit north of Jerusalem. It's closer to that border with Samaria. Northern Judea border would butt up against the southern border of Samaria. And this was not a time where people could travel pretty freely. You had robbers or brigands that would accost people all the time. So you've got this traveler, he's going down. Now, I just noted that Jericho is north of Jerusalem. What's this business about going down? Think in terms of elevation. Jerusalem was on a higher altitudinal plane than Jericho. So by going down, you're actually descending from a higher altitude to a lower altitude. And along that journey, this particular man is accosted and robbed and beaten. That's all we know about the robbers. So there are three people that then find the beaten person after being molested by the robbers. They are a priest, a Levite, and then our Samaritan. So the priest. Israel's worship is controlled by a Levitical clan. That is the tribe of Levi, or the clan of Levi, one of the 12 tribes that make up the people of Israel in the Old Testament. The Levites are the broader family, and that family is charged with everything having to do with the upkeep of the tabernacle, and then later the temple. When the tabernacle was a movable structure, so they would be involved in taking care of moving it, packing it, and so forth. The temple is a permanent structure, and so their duties change to be more maintenance related with the temple. The priest, these folks all descend specifically from the family of Aaron. Now, Aaron was Moses. You probably heard of Moses. Moses' brother. And his family, a family within Levi, becomes the priestly family, and that's passed down, almost like a dynasty. There are problems with that historically in terms of who is included in the priesthood. But for our way of thinking, we know that these two folks, whether they are priests or Levites, they're involved with the temple. They're involved with temple worship. And what they do, we'll talk about in the next lecture. And then you've got this Samaritan. This Samaritan is an individual that's hated, right? Jewish folks in Galilee, Jewish folks in Judea, Samaria in the middle, and the Samaritans, because of their mixed ancestry, are hated, and also because of theological differences. The Samaritans say that you're supposed to worship in a different mountain. They follow a different kind of scripture. It's related, but it's been changed a little bit. And so as a result, the Jewish people and the Samaritan people had quite a bit of animosity. We see this a couple of times in the New Testament. We see it here. We see it in John chapter 4 when Jesus encounters this woman at this well in Samaria. And then there's this innkeeper. And it's the last person in our list of characters. And what we're going to see as we go through this is that the unexpected happens. The people that you expect to do one thing do another, both for good and for ill. And by this, Jesus makes a point concerning who is the neighbor. All right, so we'll pick up the event and unpack that a little bit in the next talk.